All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to say hello. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Diane Bosanjuk. I will be your support contact during this webinar. Just a quick little reminder, this webinar is being recorded for archival purposes. If you have any questions or issues during the webinar, please use the chat feature below, and someone from AIBS, pretty much me, will be assisting you. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please use the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen and just type in your question, and someone from AIBS will relay your question to the presenter. So again, thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Barbara Tiers.
Okay, yes, my name is Barbara Tiers. I'm the director of the herbarium at the New York Botanical Garden. My co-author on this presentation is Anna K. Monfils. She'll be joining in, but I'll be doing the talking. Anna Monfils is from Central Michigan University, I should have said. We are giving this presentation on behalf of the Biodiversity Collections Network, BCoN, which is an NSF-funded RCN, which has been having a number of programs of one sort or another during the past few years to see what we can do to leverage collections data for broader use. So this particular endeavor is, we're calling it Harnessing Biodiversity Collections Data for Addressing National Challenges. And basically what we're doing is giving it through a number of different platforms, presentations at meetings, this webinar, so forth, trying to gather the consensus or opinions from the community about what should be next for biodiversity collections. As you all know, in the past 8 years now, we have been engaged in the advancing digitization of biodiversity collections effort through NSF, which has been a massive push to digitize collections and to use those collections for research, education, and so forth. That effort ends in 2020. And the strategic plan that it was based on also sort of was taking that 10-year frame. So we're thinking ahead now to what should come next. And that's what this is all about. So just a summary of how we've gotten here. And it's interesting to note to remember back to how iDigBio and the current effort developed. In 2010, there was an initial focus group meeting to talk about how we might digitize more of the nation's collections. There was then a second follow-up meeting to that, which was meant to write a strategic plan for how that might happen. And that was the focus group was in the early winter. Well, I guess early January, February. The second meeting was in March or April. We'd finished the strategic plan, I think sometime maybe in June, and the first iDigBio competition was actually announced that fall. So this all happened very quickly. There was an opportunity that NSF saw through some language that come out in various government documents, and they sort of guided us to take the best possible advantage of that. So then iDigBio, in 2011, the first round of funding was, funds were dispersed from iDigBio. That established iDigBio, the University of Florida, Florida State, and the first TCNs. The BCoN itself was funded, actually I think it's 2013, not 2014, when both BCoN was established and also when the implementation plan. So the strategic plan was followed up by an implementation plan, which was meant to be a guide to how digitization and the use of digitized data unfolded in this country. So then in 2017, NSF program officers asked BCoN specifically, to make a reevaluation of the strategic and implementation plan and to seek community input on the future of collections digitization, collections use, etc. And so that is what this effort, this webinar, and the other outreach we're doing is involved in. We are gathering community opinion, and we hope then to formulate that into a new strategic plan or maybe a white paper that will respond to NSF's request. And this will, of course, be put out in draft form, probably through the BCoN website, and comment incorporated. But our goal is to now, before we do that, to get as much feedback from as many elements, as many stakeholders as possible, whether they are collections managers, researchers, students, users of data in some other way. So that is why we very much want feedback. So this is what in very broad terms, what the implementation plan called for. And these are high-level goals. They had a number of sub-goals underneath them, and some of them at this most abstracted level are a little difficult to understand. The first one is obvious. The second one is really about the mechanics of creating, sharing, maintaining digital data, the infrastructure, the cyber infrastructure. Goal 3 was training collection staff and creating a generation of people who are well informed to manage electronic biodiversity data. Goal 4 was increasing, the use of the data. 5 is really about sustainability, and 6 is about incorporating, infusing specimen-based learning and exploration into formal and informal education. So those were the goals that were laid out in the plan. And to summarize in very broad terms, the progress that's been made towards those goals. And first of all, in terms of digitization, I'm sure many of you know or probably have participated in some way in iDigBC. There have been about 20 of these thematic collections networks funded. Specimens have been digitized from more than 560 collections in more than 336. The pluses are there because I know new awards were made this year and I don't have the numbers on that. And of course, iDigBio continues as the organizational unit for the digitization. They provide training and help with data mobilization to participating institutions, and they also share the data that have been created through their iDigBio portal, which has over 1.105 million specimen records and 22 million media records from 1,600 different data sets. In terms of research, there have been now 2 very successful digital data conferences. I'm sorry, I left the word conference out in that bullet point. But two digital data conferences in biodiversity research. Oh no, it is there, it's in the end, sorry. One was last year in Ann Arbor, and the other was just completed last week in UC Berkeley. Both cases were 2 to 3 day conferences where there were a series of keynote speakers where people talked about new uses for biodiversity data, and then a series of participant contributions and poster sessions about the use of biodiversity data. Definitely this is a brand new avenue of research, and it's definitely being pursued actively. A few structural groups have been created on training to help with that effort. There's a group called ICER, which is Integrating Collections and Ecological Research Working Group, which is figuring out how to disseminate relevant research-ready data to ecologists and documents the uses of collections that are serving specifically ecological research and conservation. There's been a partnership formed between iDigBio and Data Carpentry, which is a group that really has the goal of teaching data literacy and building communities in that way. And iDigBio also is tracking research use based on publications and the citation of the iDigBio database or any of the other databases that are related to TCNs. So we are keeping track of research, and I think it's without question that research use has increased. Education has been a very successful aspect of it. The iDigBio Education and Outreach Working Group has had many different activities, including developing K-12 lesson plans, some of these by TCN, some by iDigBio. Many of you may have seen the Library of Life collection cards, which are meant for sort of informal audience, where you can use a QR reader to see a 3D image of an organism and learn about it on the card. There's been iDigBio, which is public participation partner. They've hosted now 3 different engagement events with, you can see there some of the statistics. It's been a successful and growing effort. And then more recently, and this is Anna Monville's major contribution in this area, is getting another RCN set up, which is about biodiversity literature in undergraduate education, or BLUE, which is all about using the data that we are digitizing and other sources to improve undergraduate education in STEM fields. There have also been a variety of other NSF initiatives that, although not directly part of iDBC or even really related to it, not even from the same programs necessarily, but that are making use of data that are generated through the project. Biotify is about combining biodiversity data with other layers in order to assess the biota of a region, Florida in particular. Curator is about a workflow for updating and curating and annotating information on specimens. Morphosource is about storing 3D imaging projects, and paleobiology is sort of I think just biological specimens, but then additional information. PhyloLink is about linking occurrence data for specimens with their phylogenetic background. And I kind of forget what the whole tail is, but again, it's one of these things which is the input from specimen, it's adding specimen data into a whole lot of phylogenetic, genomic, and other information for a whole information source about specimens. I think it might be a workflow program. So I think it's clear a great deal has been accomplished towards the NIBA goal. However, there are still some areas requiring attention. I put question mark because it's all on the table going forward. We don't have to have the same goals. We made these goals, some years ago now, and it could be that they aren't as relevant as they were once. Maybe there's solutions that have come along, or maybe there are objectives that are considered more urgent. So, but since NSF asked us to make an assessment of how what's been done so far matches up with accomplishments and the NIBA goals, here's what that is. So we haven't really developed a long-term organization or governance structure devoted to NIBA or sustaining the digitization effort. De facto, iDigBio has been that for the period of funding, but there is no society or organization or other unit that would endure beyond the funding of iDBC that has been set up. Again, whether that's an important thing to do, or whether or not there's a solution that doesn't involve setting up that infrastructure, is all to be discussed. We don't yet really have completely efficient methods for data integration. There's certainly anybody who's tried to combine data sets from other institutions, other groups of organisms, knows the kinds of integration problems you have, data standards and so forth. And we don't really have a robust link between specimens, the specimen data source, and the research product based on it. Andy Bentley of BCoN advisor group has led a number of workshops and is continuing to do so, exploring how, from the collections point of view, we can get proper attribution of specimens so that those of us who manage collections will be able to find all the research that our specimens have been used in. But at this very moment, that is still a very important missing piece of all of this. And finally, we haven't really developed formal and inclusive training programs for the next generation of biodiversity scientists and data managers, which was part of Goal 3. So as part of our outreach to the community about this, the first thing we did was we had a survey. Some of you may have participated in this survey. It was launched in February, and this was on the BCoN website, and as you see here was what it was intended to do: elicit stakeholder information for a stakeholder vision of how to maximize the value of biodiversity collections data for collections management, etc. So we left the survey open until the end of April. During that time, we had about 180 respondents, which I thought was pretty good. And looking at this was really mostly advertised to the collections community and researchers who use collections. So you can see that it is highly skewed towards people who are directors, collections managers, curators, this pie chart shows how those break down. The overwhelming majority were directors, curators, or managers of collections that had done some digitization. There's also a group who are directors, managers, etc., but who still have no digitized specimen data. Scientists who use biodiversity data in their research. Scientists who use biodiversity data in research and teaching as well. I wish we'd had more student participation, but then we also had an other category. So that's who answered this survey, and it's important to know that when you see some of the results. So we gave people a set of goals and then asked them to sort of rank them in terms of their highest priority. And so the winners, the categories that had the most people finding this to be the goals that most people felt were the highest priority were increasing the capacity of biodiversity data for research use and digitizing more specimens. Those are really quite close. So strong signal that we need more digitized specimens and that we need more tools to use them, tools maybe training as well, to use them in research. Just barely below that would be involving more institutions in digitization. So digitizing more specimens might mean digitizing, regardless of whether an institution had already made a lot of digital records of their specimens. Involving more institutions would be a focus on including those that hadn't done any digitizing. Also considered very important was improving curation and storage. I'll point out here that this was not in the ADBC program, we were specifically not to include physical curation, storage, any of that. That's what the CSBR program was meant to be. However, going forward, it may be that those programs will be merged. Maybe a future program will not have this division between digitization and collection preservation. So there's no need necessarily, thinking forward, to be limited by that dichotomy, which was an artificial one, but it was necessary according to NSF to get the source of funding that they did. So there's still a very strong signal from the community that we need improved curation and storage of specimens. Then we see in decreasing category increasing levels of high priorityness, increasing the use for conservation policy, formal education, the collection of more specimens, and increasing within the research and collections management staff, increasing diversity, and the smallest number of people felt that increasing the use in informal education was a priority. We asked people to give other priorities that they felt were important, and these are I grouped them into broader categories, and these were what I came up with. More training, identify broader sources of funding, data quality, new technologies, broadening the user community, and focusing on particular subsets of collections. We asked which research areas would benefit from greater integration and collaboration with digitized collection data, and here we see the results of that. Obviously, systematics, ecology, and biogeography are the big winners. And then in decreasing order towards the top, with molecular biology being the smallest. It's interesting, I have to note that molecular biology and image analysis were the categories that people felt would least benefit. However, at the Digital Data Conference just completed in Berkeley, both of those were highlighted as areas where digitized collection data is making a huge difference. So I think maybe there's a lag time between the new research that's being done and its general knowledge among the collections community. And then again, we asked in a free form fashion what other categories, what other fields could benefit from greater integration with in collaboration with digitized collections data. And this is a summary of that list. I do think one observation, I was involved in the first go around in this, and I think everybody has learned to think a little bigger. I think some of these topics, especially such as art, economics, etc., probably would not have come up if we had asked this question 10 years ago. So I think that's very positive. We're all thinking more broadly. We've all probably had experiences where someone from a completely unexpected field has shown an interest in digitized data. So I think you can see from this that definitely everybody wants another funding program. I think these are exactly the predicted results. And that we very definitely believe that in order for the digitized biodiversity data that we've created over the past 10 years to reach its full potential, that we very much need another funding program of some sort. And then this question is, what should be the highest priority for that funding program? And then you can see some of them were kind of truncated in the bottom. Collections digitization, biodiversity research using collections, international collaboration, interdisciplinary research, new standards for data, enhanced technology for digitization, unique new techniques for gathering new biodiversity collections, and then enhanced imaging techniques is pretty much all that last one was. So again, very similar to in the first bar graph I showed you. So in summary, as ADBC draws near its end, it's time to update the current strategic plan or develop a new one that might guide the development of a new NSF funding program the way that NIBA did with ADBC. These aren't the same times, as isn't 2010. We don't know that it can work as smoothly or as well as it did last time around, but NSF has asked us for the information, and so we can only assume that there is the possibility that there will be some kind of funding program to follow the current one. Impressive progress has been made, but we haven't met all of the NIBA goals. They're outlined in the implementation plan, and maybe, certainly an open question whether those goals should be updated. Respondents to the survey were strongly in favor of continued digitization and the facilitation of research that uses these data, and they clearly believe there's a much wider audience for collections data that is not yet making use of this resource. So that is the end of my formal presentation. We have a few questions for discussion. These don't have to be what we talk about, but just to read through these, and actually you could respond to these if you want. You certainly don't have to. If you are interested in responding but don't care to do it in the webinar format, you can see that we've created a form. Here's the URL to it, where you could record your responses, and these will all go into the mix as we write up the document that's to follow. So the questions that we're very much interested in are: what can be done to make data derived from collections more widely available or known to users outside of ecology and systematics? I'll point out here that NSF has made it quite clear that they will judge the success of the breadth of how they'll judge how broadly our data are having impact when it transcends just systematics in ecology. I can remember a time when we would have been very glad to have ecologists using our collections data, but there now the bar's been raised, and ecologists and systematists are considered the natural audience. So what will impress NSF is when we get more communities outside of systematics and ecology engaged with our data. NSF has left the door open to considering a new initiative that will consider physical as well as digital specimens. What are the pros and cons of effectively combining collections in support of biodiversity research and the iDigBio programs? I want to point out, nobody has said that they're going to combine those programs. I'm not giving a news flash here, but in going forward, that the possibility is that dichotomy might not continue, and it's certainly up to us to make our feelings known about that, yay or nay. What are some of the specific activities that were not included in the NIBA plan or the iDigBio program that should be included in the new funding program or plan? For the NIBA goals that have not yet been attained, and I mentioned those, what are the most important to address in a new plan? And then what different goals should we have? And we got sort of lukewarm signal to this question, but it does come up, and some people are very passionate about it, and that is whether or not the new collection of new specimens should be part of a new plan for biodiversity collections. So that's the end of my presentation. As I said, you can ask questions about any of these, or make statements. And if you wish to expound on these topics and have BCoN and the other people we've involved in preparing the next plan read them, please go to the URL and record them. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I included the URL in the Zoom chat box, so if anybody would like to click on that, they can, instead of writing it down. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them or ask them in the Q&A feature in Zoom. So on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A box, and just click on that and a box should pop up and you can type in your question. If you prefer to type it in chat, you can type it in chat as well. It's whatever is convenient for you. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes to go ahead and ask if they have to see if they have any questions for you. While we give everybody a few minutes to type up their questions, Barbara, would you like me to include these questions in the URL to the after email?
Yeah, sure, that'd be great if you do that. Yeah,
great. If you don't mind sending me
yeah,
an email of it,
good. Yep.
I'm sure I'll butcher it if I try to type it out.
I'll gladly do that.
Thanks. Okay. So I'll give everybody again a couple minutes to go and ask questions, and if you have any questions after it, feel free to email me. The email will be in the email that you receive after the webinar tomorrow with my email, and I can forward it to Barbara if you'd like. So. All right, I have a question here from Marcella. Hi, Barbara. I'm a researcher at the Darwinian Botanical Institute. I really like your seminar. Read my box so I can read the question. I think it is very important that we spread the importance of collections of natural history and basic science. Is it possible to access those data that you are commenting on, for example, about priorities? I would love to cite that when appropriate. Thanks a lot and good luck.
Hi, Marcella. If you're talking about the information that is in this presentation, I could write it up. I should write it up. I mean, that's something that could go on the BCoN website, I think. It won't be a formal publication, but I could put the text of this, make it available on the BCoN website. I do think if you're looking for some of the older documentations, I do think Both the strategic plan and the implementation plan are available online. I don't know if AIBS, there was a problem with the link to the implementation plan. I don't know if that's been fixed. But anyway, if they're not available at the moment, we'll get them up soon. So sure, and if there's, I think also the survey questions are still up there if that's of interest. But I will definitely write up the kind of summary of the results and make them available.
And the link to that one PDF has been fixed.
Oh, great. Fabulous. Good.
And I'll give a couple minutes. And remember, this recording, this webinar is recording, and we will be posting it on the BCoN site. So if you want to go back and review over some things, you are more than welcome to do that. I'm not seeing any more questions. I'll go ahead and start with my goodbye. If anybody does have a question. Oh, I got one. Right when I said I'm a graduate student between my master's from MU and my PhD at CINC, specifically studying biodiversity conservation via digitization. I strongly believe that the collections of new specimens should be part of a new plan in order to set a precedent for budding collectors / data technicians. Maybe it could be helpful to include a set of data standards for new collectors.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm with you on that. It seems to me that if we don't keep making new collections, then the value of specimens in terms of tracking change in vegetation over time stops. So we really have to keep doing it. I do think we could, with the new tools available, we definitely could make the whole process of collecting, documenting collections, and so forth much more efficient. And personally, if it went up to me, that would be solidly part of a new program, because I don't firmly believe that we need to keep collecting, but we also need to do it in such a way that we don't just keep increasing the number of specimen backlogs that sit in a closet somewhere. We need to make collections that are fully documented and get them immediately into the stream of data that people can use. And I would very much like to see that be part of the new plan.
I have another question from Teresa. Hi, Barbara. Congratulations for a great webinar. I will definitely, it will definitely be important to revisit the very important data you presented. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa.
All right, great. Well, I'll give people a couple more minutes to ask any questions, but I'll go ahead and remind everybody while they think of these questions that we have another webinar coming up on June 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's called, or the title is Addressing Legal Issues Involving Digitized Collections, the Nagoya Protocol as a test case. This webinar will summarize discussions and findings from a BCoN organized workshop held at Harvard on March of 2018 to address legal concerns associated with digitizing collections and mitigating these issues using digital means. Okay. Please visit the BCoN website to register and find out more about that. And again, the thank you follow-up email being sent out will have a link to go there. So I think those are all of the questions that we have. So I would like to go ahead and thank oh, nope, I got another one. Hi, Barbara. This is from Iroro. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Hi, Barbara. There are opportunities for international research to collaborate on the new collections front. I'm a PhD candidate at TTU and hoping to return to Nigeria soon. Are there opportunities for international research to collaborate on new collections front?
I mean, At the moment, it would be the only existing structure is through the digitization grants, which have involved some students, but not really student researchers, mostly students as digitizers. This first program, however, NSF has had a program, a postdoc program for those who are using digitized data. You might look into that. I don't know what the deadlines are, but they have had a postdoc specifically about using digitized data in research. And beyond that, I would say your best bet is to find out some of the researchers who are using digitized data actively in their laboratories and see if they have any opportunities. You could look at the recent digital data meeting in Berkeley, see who some of the PIs were who talked about their research, and contact them to see if there are any opportunities. But there is, aside from the postdoc program, at the moment, there isn't any program that would support students to do research with collections, unless I'm mistaken, but I think that's really the only thing.
All right, I have Jason. Hi, Barbara. I'm a large river fish ecologist from the Illinois Natural History Survey and a PhD candidate with the University of New England in Australia. I'm interested in the importance of collections for affecting or influencing fisheries or wildlife management or policy. Are you aware of any such studies or organizations? Thanks.
Well, as a botanist, it's not really my area. I mean, we always list fisheries as potential users of the data. The extent to which they may be doing so, I really don't know. However, I do suggest that you contact iDigBio and see if they have encountered any use of their data for fisheries specifically. If you go to it's idigbio.org, the website, there's any number of places where there's contact information. I know the person who is keeping track of the research is Sherry Ellis, S-H-R-I Ellis. She's the one who keeps track of publications. She may know, but anyway, I would go to iDigBio for that, or anybody you might know who works on fish. Anybody out there works on fish know about this? I don't. That's the best I can recommend. Sorry.
All right, great.
I will say, sorry, one more thing. Larry Page, who is the PI of iDigBio, is a fish expert, and so I really do think you might want to write directly to him. You can find his email on the website. He'd probably know if anybody, and he's the head of the whole thing. So I'd try him. Dr. Larry Page, P-A-G-E.
I have Kelsey. Thanks for a great webinar. I see in the NIBA protocol, it says promote new undergrad curricula and graduate programs in diversity informatics to include software engineering and informatic activities. Have there been any developments about what kind of training should be implemented for graduate students, or has it focused mostly on undergrad and collections professionals?
Well, so there have been data carpentry workshops that are open to everybody. They aren't specifically for graduate students. They're for anybody who wants it. And honestly, many professionals have never received training about how to manage large data sets. So everybody's sort of in the same boat there. I don't know. I think there have been. I know University of Florida had a class, I believe it was a graduate level class, maybe advanced undergraduate, on data usage, and they on how to use digital data, and they actually, I think you could probably still find the course online. That was a year or so ago. But the programs that have been funded, like the Blue Initiative, is about specifically about undergraduate education. And as we noted, one of the things that hasn't really happened from the NIBA plan is training programs for collections professionals about how to manage data and so forth. And I think you could really put graduate training in there. So there have been some opportunities. but there isn't anything like an actual program, although obviously that's a very strong need if the next generations are going to use this data resource to its maximum capability.
Great, thanks. And I think that's pretty much all of the questions that we've had so far.
Okay.
All right. So I would like to go ahead. I'm sure when I start to talk, somebody's gonna ask questions. So I'd like to go ahead and thank Dr. Barbara Tiers for presenting today. And again, we'll be sending out a follow-up email with how to access the recording and how to find out more about BCoN and some of the events and webinars that we have coming. So again, thank you everyone for joining today. And we hope to see you next time, which would be June 27th. Thank you everyone and have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you.